Hello again, everyone. It's going to be another book review for Book Talk. And this week's book right here for you is going to be about the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, an American slave. Now, before I jump into it, there are a few things I'm going to go over throughout my review. The first thing I'm going to go over is a brief summary just to get into the details. The middle portion of this review is going to be about my insights, certain quotes, things I found interesting from the book, and last but not least, I'm going to have my rating. So now, for those of you who aren't into books or anything of that sort, have a good day. But for anybody else who would like to be entertained or learn or are curious, stay on, because now I begin. With the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass. It starts out in the preface of the book at the Anti-Slavery Convention in 1841, and the different individuals there are describing this slave who speaks so passionately. He's so eloquent, so articulate. And in that chapter, it explains that it ends up being Frederick Douglass. And then from there, it goes into his life. The fact that he was born in Tuckahoe, Maryland, that he was born to a Black African-American woman named Harriet Bailey, and a white man, though nobody knows who his father is. Some claim it's his master, but no one really investigates that. And from there, it flushes out how the lifestyle was. Though they were in Maryland, which was north of the Mason-Dixon line, separating the North and the South of the United States, in Maryland, plantations were just as bad. There wasn't a lot of freedom, and it shows the violence and just how graphic it is, right? The whippings, the beatings, the fact that a mother was getting whipped and the kids were praying and begging for mercy. The overseer would just keep going. In fact, he reveled in it. He loved the fact that he was doing it. And it's a terrible thing just to see these atrocities. The fact that all of these individuals were seen as less than human when they were just as human as anybody else in American society. Now it goes from there. And it flushes out all these details, right? The punishments they received, the terrible conditions, the fact that they didn't have many clothes, the fact that even though they were seen as valuable property, that oftentimes the overseers would just be cruel and would have no qualms about shooting somebody if they disobeyed them. It's very graphic and very descriptive, especially coming from an individual who lived through it firsthand in the past. And as the story develops, Frederick ends up going to the city. At first, he was on a plantation. When he goes to the city, Baltimore specifically, his mistress ends up teaching him how to read and write, basic 3 or 4 letter words, sounding out letters, things of that sort. And he's very appreciative of it. But then her husband comes over and says, that's unbecoming of a slave. You don't do that. Slaves wouldn't appreciate it. They're not going to be happy. You can't go around educating them. And so then at that moment, Frederick said, you know what? I'm getting on this. I'm going to learn. This is my mission now. Now, of course, the individuals didn't allow him to, the mistress and the master, they didn't allow him to read. They would catch him, they'd punish him for it. But what he would do is he would get some food, because when he was in the city, he had plenty of food. He would go out to the white neighbor kids and he would trade with them, so to speak. He would give them biscuits and food, and instead he would make the kids outside like his tutors, his teachers, so they would teach him things. And that's how over a decent number of years, he learned how to read and write. And from there, his situation becomes interesting in the sense that he's able to read and write. And now he wants to be free. He wants out now that his awareness has increased. And from there, it talks about his struggles. He's passed around from master and he works for different people. And eventually there's a climactic point. He, wanting to escape, plans his first mission. And what he does is he takes a group of 5 slaves. It's himself, it's Henry Harris, John Harris, Henry, Harriet, and Charles Roberts. They all come together, and their mission is this. They're going to get on a canoe and take it up, paddle several miles up the Chesapeake Bay. And once they reach there, they would continue to run north towards the North Star until they got to the land of the free, the true free, in fact. But unfortunately, somebody rats them out. And so all 5 of them are put into jail. And while the other 4 slaves in the group decide to go back, in a sense, tails tucked between legs, whatever you want to see. They were still brave for doing it, but they decided to give in. But Frederick didn't. And now he was originally supposed to get sent to the South, but then he ends up getting sent back to Baltimore. Again, finding work as a shipbuilder. And from there, he doesn't get too detailed and purposely leaves it that way. But he ends up on his second attempt becoming a free man. In fact, it's cool at the very end of the book. It ends up showing what he thinks about the situation, how he couldn't trust anybody at first, and also it shows how he got the last name Douglas. Originally, his name was Frederick Augustus Washington Bailey. But then, an individual hands him the name Douglas from the book. He was reading the book Lady of the Lake. So that's how he became Frederick Douglass. And that's your basic narrative of the entire book. Now, what did I learn or what did I find interesting about the book? I'm going to go to page 49, I believe. Yes, page 49. And there's a section I would like to read from it. And just to give a little background, this is about him learning how to read and write and the new predicament he feels, like the new awareness and the dilemma he finds himself in from having educated himself. Here we go. As I read and contemplated the subject, behold, that very discontentment which Master Hugh had predicted would follow my learning to read had already come, to torment and sting my soul to unutterable anguish. As I writhed under it, I would at times feel that learning to read had been a curse rather than a blessing. It had given me a view of my wretched condition without the remedy. It opened my eyes to the horrible pit, but to no ladder upon which to get out. In moments of agony, I envied my fellow slaves for their stupidity. I have often wished myself a beast. I preferred the condition of the meanest reptile to my own. Anything, no matter what, to get rid of thinking. Now, I appreciated that part, because while reading and writing gave him the ability to escape his situation, to impact society, to become a free man. In a sense, he wasn't free, because when he read and took in information, he could see it. He could see what was going on. But as it said, there was no solution. As in, just because he read, it didn't automatically provide him with a, all right, here you go, cool, problem solved. It helped him, but a variety of situations had to come together in order to create the situation for him to become a free man. So that was really a striking passage from the book right there. Then also, he discusses the idea of granting or claiming freedom and the responsibility that comes with it. And there's a passage in the book where he's talking about how the plantation owners go about things. Now, most days of the week, of the year, they're working hard, they're getting punished, they're not eating much food, they're holding on by a thread to survive. But then what the masters would do is they would say, hey, for a week or two, you guys get a break. You can do whatever you want. Go ahead, relax. So they would, for a week or two during Christmas break or any other sections of that sort. And the masters themselves would even get the slaves alcohol. And that's what most of the slaves would do. They would drink, they would dance, they would sing, they would do all these merry things and have a blast. Some of them would do productive activities like reading, creating things, but most of them were engaged in just having a good time. But what would happen is they would have this good time, they would get drunk, and then having gone through that to the extreme levels of pleasure, they would say, all right, we're ready to go back and work again. This is what we like to do because this freedom that we have isn't all that great. Maybe it's not all it's cracked up to be. And so that was an interesting point that I saw where it's like freedom comes with responsibility. Seeking pleasure, while we all need a little bit, is not the answer to anything. Nothing close. And that's the interesting thing is that many of us, when we discuss freedom, we feel that we have to have a good time. We always have to have fun. That's what it's all about. But when you take pleasure and you go to that end, and that's all you want to do every single day, you don't find meaning. You don't find love. And you certainly don't find truth. So when he talks about freedom, I really appreciated that. Now, overall, what am I going to rate this book? For a guy who started reading and writing around the age of 12, he is definitely articulate. It's composed brilliantly, very detailed, gives you an idea of the 1800s and what the time period was like. A lot of helpful hints and tips. I put this in my top 10 list of books that somebody must read. It really gives you an idea. And when I think about it, there are things I can take from this book and use to apply to the present day, be it the United States of America or be it the way that other countries around the world are like. And so my rating out of 10, I'm going to give it a 9. 9, it's very good for all the previous reasons that I said. If I was to get a little nitpicky, I couldn't tell, and maybe I got to do more research. It's like it seemed like he didn't write and put these things together. Like he's just remembering certain details, and it's very good for what he remembers. I would have liked to see more and more the knick-knack little details. But that's just rather pitiful on my end. 9 out of 10, one of the great books that somebody must read. So again, my book talk book review, Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, an American Slave. I thank you for watching this. I greatly appreciate it. Please leave a comment, leave any advice. You can ask me questions, really anything. I'm open and down for it because, again, I'm trying to improve. I'm trying to explore literature, perhaps impart lessons onto myself and to others. And if it entertains, hey, that's what it's all about. So again, thank you very much, and I hope you have a good one.